Today, we're going to break down a pretty wild legal battle. It's a case that really pulls the curtain back on a sophisticated corporate foreclosure playbook. And what's amazing is it's a story that pits this massive industrial scale strategy against one homeowner's absolutely unprecedented and, frankly, brilliant response. This entire conflict, this whole David versus Goliath struggle, is just perfectly captured in this one single phone call. On one end, you've got a corporate attorney who's expecting fear, expecting the homeowner to just fold. But on the other end, you have Jeremy Bass, who's not just unintimidated, he actually sounds excited for the fight. Right then and there, that was the first sign that the standard playbook was about to completely fall apart. All right, so here's how we're going to walk through this. First, we'll unpack the corporate playbook that's used to snap out properties like this one. Then, we'll meet the man who refused to back down. We're going to analyze his incredible legal counter strategy and the dramatic standoff that happened over a key witness. We'll also get into a tricky legal idea called mootness and how it was used as a weapon. And finally, we'll look at what this one single fight tells us about the entire system. Okay, first things first. To really get what's going on here, you have to understand the corporate machine behind it all. Analysts who have studied this have called it an industrial-scale equity extraction machine. It's a system designed to move wealth from homeowners to big investment groups, not by winning on the merits of a case, but by manipulating the legal process itself. And this machine, it's not random. It follows this very specific 5-stage playbook. It kicks off by creating documentation chaos to make a foreclosure look justified. Then, boom, they run an accelerated auction before the homeowner can even mount a real defense. After that, it's all about the possession rush. Get the person out fast. Stage 4 is to eliminate any anchors, meaning anyone with a legal tie to the property. And the endgame? Manufactured mootness, a clever trick designed to make any legal appeal totally irrelevant. So that brings up a really critical question, right? How legitimate is this whole process? I mean, in Bass's case, the auction itself felt off. And when you start looking at the bigger picture, you see a pattern that suggests this was no accident. Well, someone did the forensic analysis on a series of auctions in Utah. These involved the same corporate players and the same law firm acting as the trustee. And the number they came up with is just staggering. The chances of them winning 12 auctions in a row in a truly fair, competitive market was 1 in over 244 million. Look, a number that small isn't just a run of bad luck. It is a giant blinking red light. It practically screams that the process was manipulated. It points to a coordinated strategy to muscle out the competition and scoop up these properties for way less than they're worth. But this machine, with its playbook and its nearly impossible winning streak, it ran headfirst into something it was not expecting at all. Jeremy Bass, a homeowner who just completely refused to follow their script. In fact, he decided to write a brand new one. And Bass's situation really is best described by this term, perforce pro se. So he wasn't representing himself because he wanted to. He was forced into it. He kept running into local lawyers who had conflicts of interest and couldn't take his case. And honestly, that makes the sophisticated legal defense he built even more remarkable. So what do you do when you're up against a corporate giant? Well, Bass knew he couldn't fight fire with fire. He couldn't outspend them. So instead, he engineered this brilliant asymmetric defense. It was like a legal work of art, designed to completely neutralize all the procedural tricks his opponents were counting on. His whole strategy really rested on these two interlocking agreements. First, there was a residential lease with his tenant, Dwayne Pike. This created a legal anchor, establishing occupancy rights that would actually survive the foreclosure. And second, a custodial agreement that made Pike the legal guardian of Bass's personal property, creating what you could call a liability tripwire if anyone tried to remove it. You see? Two separate legal shields working together perfectly. I mean, this lease was a masterpiece of contract design. It had a 2-year term that automatically transferred with the ownership. It made the new landlord responsible for paying all the utilities. And here's the kicker. It specifically stated that only Jeremy Bass himself could waive the huge financial penalties for terminating the lease early. So the new owners, they bought a house, sure, but they also inherited a tenant and a whole bunch of financial headaches they couldn't get rid of unless Bass agreed. And that brings us to the final hurdle in the corporation's playbook, Bass's tenant, Dwayne Pike. He wasn't just some guy renting a room. He became the crucial preservation witness. He was the last legal link to the property before the foreclosure, and he was the last person standing between the corporation and their goal. You can literally see their desperation growing just by looking at this timeline. At first, they offered Pike just $700 to leave. But by March, after they had already won in the lower court and physically kicked Bass out, their offer suddenly jumped sevenfold to $5,000. Now, why would you get more generous when you think your legal position is stronger? When you actually run the numbers, this offer makes absolutely zero economic sense. The most they could ever collect from Pike in rent for the rest of the lease was $4,000, yet they offered him $5,000 to leave. That's not a business decision, that is a strategic one. It tells you their motive had nothing to do with profit. So, what was the real motive? Well, the most likely answer is something called title washing. The corporation was in a huge hurry to scrub the property's title clean of any problems, like, say, a tenant, so they could sell it fast to an innocent buyer. Because once that happens, it's almost impossible for Bass to ever get his home back, no matter how strong his legal appeal is. This whole thing, this rush to get Pike out, it all centers on one specific legal doctrine that the corporation was trying to exploit to make the entire case just go away. And that concept is called mootness. So their ultimate goal was to achieve what's known as manufactured mootness. It's basically a procedural knockout punch. So imagine you're appealing an unfair eviction. If the landlord demolishes the building before your appeal is heard, they can just walk into court and say the case is moot. I mean, what's the point of deciding who gets to live in a pile of rubble? That's exactly what they were trying to do here, create irreversible facts on the ground to make the whole legal process meaningless. But here is the beautiful irony of it all. In their mad dash to manufacture mootness, the plaintiffs completely backed themselves into a legal corner. Now, they own a property they can't actually control. They're legally on the hook for utilities, they can't touch Bass's personal stuff without risking another lawsuit, and they can't possibly sell the house with a tenant and all this legal baggage attached. Okay, so let's zoom out for a minute, because this case is way more than just one house in Idaho. It's really a perfect microcosm of a much, much larger issue. The tactics used against Jeremy Bass, they're not unique. They seem to be part of a nationwide strategy. In this national playbook, it seems to involve a few key things. Systematically avoiding any real judicial review by creating these procedural dead zones, these little windows where a homeowner's rights exist on paper but can't be enforced in time. They use these title laundering pipelines to sell properties off super fast, making any appeal almost impossible to win. And they strategically suppress witnesses with buyouts to just erase inconvenient facts from the record. And at the heart of all this is a truly explosive conflict of interest. The very same law firm that was representing the buyers in the Idaho case was also acting as the supposedly neutral trustee in those statistically impossible auctions back in Utah. This creates a direct, undeniable link between the suspicious auctions and the hyper-aggressive legal tactics used against Bass. You know, one legal analyst who looked at this whole mess just summed it up perfectly. They said the corporation made a fatal miscalculation. They followed their playbook, step by step, expecting an easy win. But what they got instead was an opponent who knew their strategy even better than they did and turned it right back against them. And so we're left with this really big, provocative question that gets right to the heart of the matter. This case forces us all to ask, when a system's own rules are being twisted and used as weapons to prevent justice, what are the courts supposed to do? The answer isn't just going to decide the fate of one house in Idaho, it could end up setting a major precedent for homeowner rights all across the country.